So what should we think about when we want to create a conversation area in our living room? Hi everyone, it's Carol from Discover Interior Design, and I'm so glad you're here. Well, in this video, we're going to talk about how to create an ideal conversation area so that we can easily and comfortably have conversations in our living room. So let's get started. So first thing, let's just define what a conversation area is in a living room. I always think of it just kind of as a grouping of furniture. It's a seating area where we can sit and gather and easily have conversations. And a typical seating area could be maybe a sofa and a chair and all of the coordinating furniture that goes into that grouping. It could even be just two chairs, but just more than one seating area that we could hold a conversation with someone else. And we could almost draw a line around this grouping of furniture. We can almost put an area rug under all of those different pieces of furniture that are part of that seating area, part of that conversation area. And in some ways, we could even say that that grouping, that conversation area, could be mobile. Maybe we could move it from one area to another. And I think the goal to have with a conversation area is that we can easily have conversations, that it's comfortable, that we can easily talk and listen to other people without any interruptions. And so within that conversation area, there's some things to think about regarding spacing to make sure that that grouping, all of those pieces of furniture are close enough so that we can make that happen, have these nice, comfortable conversations. And there's some interesting things to think about. One thing is that we have longer conversations at home compared to when we are out in the public, or it probably depends upon where we are out in public. But in general, at home, that's where we want to feel comfortable and have a nice, comfortable place to be able to talk and listen and gather. And one thing that's kind of interesting is the term Proxemics, which is the study and application of personal space zones. So how close we like to be to one another. And this really depends upon our personal preferences and also cultural norms. And in general, in Western culture, when we're out in public, we want to be kind of farther away. We want to have more space around us, in between people. Whereas when we're at home, that's a different thing. We want to be closer to people. So when we're talking about setting up conversation areas in our living room, we ideally want to be able to talk to someone who is across from us. So that could be having a sofa with some chairs on the opposite side. Or think of sitting at a dining table and you're sitting across from someone and how easy that conversation is, that it's close enough so that we can listen and have conversations in a really comfortable way. And if that's not possible, to have, say, a sofa with two chairs across from it, the other situation that we are comfortable with is being able to sit side by side or sit next to someone. And especially if those seating areas on the other side, say if we had chairs on the other side of the sofa, but they're too far away for us to just sit and relax and have a comfortable conversation, then we may think about putting those chairs next to the sofa or perpendicular to the sofa or at a little bit of an angle. And think of sitting again at a dining table, and when we're sitting next to someone on either side or someone next to us on the other side of the table, we can easily have conversations. And there's kind of a conversation zone that designers use to kind of plan how large or how close everything in that grouping of furniture should be. And this can range from 7 feet to 10 feet. So a 7-foot or 10-foot wide diameter circle. And so what that means is if we were going to place a center point inside a grouping of furniture, a grouping of a conversation area, and create a 7-foot to 10-foot wide circle, we would want to have all those pieces of furniture at least touching parts of that circle. And that gives us the ideal situation where we can easily have a conversation. And think of the opposite situation of that, where furniture is not in a grouping, in a conversation area, inside that kind of comfort zone of creating a conversation area, where maybe we have a sofa on one wall and the opposite wall we have chairs. And yes, we can still have a conversation, but it's not as easy as if all of those pieces of furniture were inside that grouping, kind of within that conversation zone. Or think of even if you are having a large family gathering and you have a really large dining room table, or maybe you're out at an event and there's a large table. Well, sometimes it's not the easiest thing to have a conversation with one person at one end of the table and with the other person at the end of the table. Or even think about when you are at an event, maybe at a wedding, and they have those big round banquet tables that seat 10 people or even 8 people. And it's kind of challenging to have a comfortable conversation with someone at the opposite side. So that's what we're kind of thinking about, conversation area where we are in kind of this nice comfort zone, this nice conversation area that makes it easy to gather and hang out together. So one thing to think about before we even think about creating a conversation area is to make sure that we find out in our living room where is the main pathway that goes through that living room, because that's going to determine where we put our conversation area. Because the ideal situation is we don't have a main pathway that goes right through the middle of our conversation area. We want to make sure we can get into our conversation area, a pathway to get in, and areas to be able to move around in our conversation area. But we don't want to place our conversation area in the middle of a main pathway. So that's the first thing to think about. Then after you have decided where your main pathway is through your room to get from one side of the room to another side of the room, is where you want to place your sofa. And when you're deciding where to place your sofa, which will be the main feature of that conversation area, see if you can come up with 2 options. Maybe one option is against the wall and maybe another option is out in the room, maybe perpendicular to that wall. So just kind of keep that in mind. There may be more than one option on where you can place your entire conversation area. And after you do that, then all of your other pieces of furniture can fall into place inside that conversation area. The next thing I would think about is where to place a chair or 2 chairs, however many chairs you have, and whether they can be placed opposite the sofa or next to the sofa. And one thing to think about is spacing within your conversation area. We can use that conversation area zone as a way to help us make sure that all of our furniture is close enough. Then after you've figured out where you want your sofa and a chair or 2, then you can place all of the other coordinating pieces of furniture like your coffee table and end tables or plants or lamps or anything else like that. And if you do have an area rug, that's where we talked about where we can almost frame in our conversation area. So an area rug is a natural way of doing that, where all pieces of furniture within that conversation area sit on the rug at least a little bit. And then when you've placed all that furniture inside there, one thing that's important to think about is the spacing in between those different pieces of furniture. So I always recommend, 1 to 2 inches in between different pieces of furniture. So if you have an end table that's in between a sofa and a chair, just spacing that 1 to 2 inches in between each of those pieces of furniture. And if you decide to place your sofa up against a wall or another piece of furniture up against a wall, I always recommend giving it some wiggle room, some breathing room. So placing that out 1 to 2 inches from the wall. And the other thing to think about is making sure that there's plenty of room to move around within that conversation area. So leaving maybe around 18 inches in between your coffee table and your sofa, and maybe 18 inches in front of a chair. So I'd love for you to take a moment in your busy day and check out how your conversation area in your living room is working, and see if you can do this with someone else. And we're almost kind of playing musical chairs, where one of you will sit on the sofa and the other on a chair, and see if you can easily have a conversation. And if it's kind of hard to hear and listen to one another, is there some way that you can move those pieces of furniture together a little bit better so it's more comfortable? So let me know what you find out in the comments. Thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.